Black woman saved by a stranger. Turns out he was her CEO boss. A black woman is saved by a stranger during a terrifying robbery, and she thinks it's just a moment of kindness that changed her life. But days later, strange things start happening. Her debts vanish. Her work suddenly gets approved. Doors that were always closed swing open. Someone is protecting her from the shadows. Then she discovers the truth. The stranger who saved her is her cold, powerful CEO boss, and he didn't just save her life, he's been quietly controlling it. Now she's trapped between gratitude and anger, between safety and dignity. Because she didn't want a savior, she wanted respect. So when she pulls away and risks everything to stand on her own, the world turns against her. Was his help love or control? Can she protect her future without losing her heart? And when the man who saved her becomes the man who could break her, will she walk away to save herself, or stay and fight for something bigger than both of them? I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Type it down below, and while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. The rain fell steadily over the city streets, creating shimmering pools under the yellow glow of streetlights. Nia Rowan pulled her thin jacket tighter around her shoulders as she walked home from her second job at the cafe. Her feet ached from hours of standing, but a small smile played at the corners of her mouth. The doctor's news about her mother's extended treatment had given her a spark of hope she desperately needed. Puddles splashed beneath her worn sneakers as she made her way through the familiar blocks. The weather had cleared the sidewalks of the usual evening crowd, leaving only the occasional umbrella-wielding pedestrian hurrying past. Despite her exhaustion, Nia's mind raced with calculations. How the extra shifts would help cover the new treatment timeline, whether she could pick up additional hours at the tech firm where she worked during the day. As she turned onto Harrison Street, the streetlight ahead flickered, casting uncertain shadows. Two figures emerged from the darkness of an alley. Nia's steps faltered as they moved directly into her path. Her heart began to pound as she noticed their tense postures and partially hidden faces. "Hey, lady," one of them called out, his voice rough. "Give us your bag." Nia's throat went dry. Her feet seemed rooted to the wet pavement as they advanced. The larger of the two produced something that glinted dully in the weak light, a knife. Her muscles tensed, but terror held her frozen in place. "Please," she managed to whisper, clutching her bag closer. It held her laptop with all her work files, her mother's prescription receipts, everything she couldn't afford to lose. Just as the men were about to reach her, a tall figure stepped between them. He moved with quiet confidence, his broad shoulders forming a protective barrier between Nia and her would-be attackers. Though he faced the thieves, when he spoke, his voice was gentle and directed at her. "Stay behind me," he said softly. "You're safe now." The calm authority in his voice helped Nia draw her first real breath since the confrontation began. She could only see his back, straight and steady in a dark coat, but his presence seemed to fill the whole street. To the thieves, his tone changed, becoming firm and commanding. "You don't want to do this. Walk away now." The smaller man shifted uncertainly, but his partner raised the knife. "Mind your own business, man." "This is my business," the stranger replied evenly. "There are cameras on that building behind you. Someone's already called the police. Make the smart choice." As if to confirm his words, another pedestrian across the street had their phone out, clearly dialing. A distant siren wailed. The would-be thieves exchanged glances. The smaller one grabbed his partner's arm. "Come on, man. It's not worth it." After a tense moment, they backed away and ran, disappearing into the darkness between buildings. Nia's legs suddenly felt weak. She swayed slightly, and the stranger turned, steadying her with gentle hands on her shoulders. His face was kind, with concerned eyes that studied her carefully. "Try to take deep breaths," he instructed softly. "You're safe now. Just breathe." Nia nodded, focusing on drawing air into her lungs. The rain had soaked through her jacket, and she realized she was shivering. Without hesitation, the stranger shrugged off his coat and draped it over her shoulders. The warmth of it seemed to help ground her back in reality. "Thank you," she managed finally, her voice shaky but genuine. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't—" "No need to think about that," he interrupted gently. "Would you like me to call someone for you?" Nia shook her head, pulling his coat closer. "I live just a few blocks away. I'll be okay." She looked up at him, trying to memorize his features in the dim light. "I don't even know your name." The sound of approaching sirens grew louder, and blue lights began to flash at the end of the street. When Nia turned back from glancing at them, the stranger was already moving away, his steps quiet despite his size. "Wait," she called, but he merely raised a hand in farewell as he disappeared into the rainy night, leaving Nia standing under the streetlight. She was still trembling slightly, but the warmth of his coat and the memory of his calm presence wrapped around her like a shield. The police cars pulled up, and as an officer approached to ask if she was all right, Nia hugged the borrowed coat closer, feeling strangely comforted by this brief connection with someone who had chosen to help a stranger in need. The rain continued to fall, but its rhythm felt different now, less threatening, more like a gentle reminder that even on the darkest streets, there were still good people willing to stand between others and harm. Nia touched the soft fabric of the coat, her heart rate finally returning to normal as she prepared to tell the officers what had happened. The morning sun filtered through Nia's bedroom window, casting warm patches across her tangled sheets. She winced as she sat up, her muscles protesting from the tension of the previous night. The memory of those terrifying moments on the dark street corner made her shiver, but something else lingered too. The calm strength of the stranger who'd stepped between her and danger. Nia's feet found her worn bedroom slippers, and she padded to the small corner of her room, where she kept her mother's old prayer shawl draped over a chair. Kneeling down, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Thank you, Lord, for watching over me last night," she whispered. "Thank you for sending someone to help when I was scared." Her voice caught slightly. "And please keep Mama strong through her treatments." The familiar routine of getting ready for work helped settle her nerves. As she waited for her ancient coffee maker to finish sputtering, Nia caught herself touching the spot where the stranger's coat had rested on her shoulders. She'd been too shaken to really look at his face, but she remembered his gentle voice, how he'd stood so steady while her own knees could barely hold her up. "At least now I know there are still good people out there," she murmured to herself, pouring coffee into her travel mug. The tech firm's office buzzed with its usual morning energy when Nia arrived. She was setting up her workstation when her manager, Sarah, appeared at her desk with an unexpected smile. "Good morning, Nia. I've got great news," Sarah said, holding up a familiar-looking file. "Remember that project proposal you submitted 3 months ago? The one about streamlining our customer service protocols?" Nia's heart skipped. She'd almost given up on that proposal after weeks of silence. "Yes, of course." "Well, it's been approved. Full funding, and they want implementation to start right away." Sarah beamed. "I've already set up meetings with the department heads for this week. You'll be leading the rollout." Nia stared at her screen, trying to process this sudden turn of events. "Leading? But I'm just a junior analyst. Not anymore. This is your chance to shine, Nia. I've always known you had potential." Throughout the morning, Nia's email inbox filled with meeting invitations from senior managers who'd never acknowledged her before. Her proposal was being circulated among department heads, with notes of praise she'd never expected to see. When lunchtime came, Nia decided to check her banking app while eating her packed sandwich. She nearly choked when she opened her student loan account. Where there should have been a 5-figure balance, there was nothing but zeros. "This has to be a mistake," she muttered, refreshing the page several times, but the zero balance remained, along with a note confirming "account paid in full." Her hands trembled as she called the loan servicer. After 20 minutes on hold and several transfers, a representative confirmed what seemed impossible. Her entire student loan debt had indeed been paid off. "But how?" Nia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The payment was processed yesterday evening," the representative said cheerfully. "It appears to have been paid by a private foundation, but I don't have any additional details I can share." Nia spent the rest of her workday in a daze, trying to focus on her suddenly flourishing career while her mind kept circling back to the mysterious loan payment. When 5 o'clock came, she gathered her things and headed to St. Mary's Hospital for her daily visit with her mother. The familiar antiseptic smell hit her as she walked through the sliding doors. But something felt different. The usual weight of worry about mounting. Medical bills seemed lighter somehow. "Miss Rowan!" called out Mrs. Thompson, the elderly volunteer who always worked the information desk. "The billing office asked me to flag you down if I saw you. They need to speak with you." Nia's stomach clenched. Had they found another billing error? Another insurance denial? She took the elevator to the 3rd floor, rehearsing in her head how she'd negotiate another payment plan. But the billing specialist's face held no bad news. Instead, she smiled warmly and handed Nia a printed statement. "I'm pleased to inform you that your mother's account has been paid in full," she said, "including all pending charges for her extended treatment plan." Nia gripped the edge of the desk. That's not possible. We're talking about thousands of dollars." "It's all here in black and white," the specialist said, pointing to the statement. "Paid in full yesterday evening." Nia's legs felt wobbly as she made her way to her mother's room. She found her mum sitting up in bed, looking stronger than she had in weeks, working on a crossword puzzle. "Baby girl, you look like you've seen a ghost," her mother said, patting the bed beside her. Nia sank down onto the mattress, her eyes welling up. "Mama, I don't understand what's happening. First last night, with that stranger helping me, and now today. Everything's just falling into place like a blessing." Her mother finished softly, taking Nia's hand. "Sometimes God works in ways we don't expect, baby. Sometimes he sends angels in all sorts of disguises." Later that night, Nia lay in bed, her mind too full for sleep. The fear from last night's attack felt distant now, overshadowed by the cascade of miracles that had followed. Her career suddenly advancing, her crushing student debt vanishing, her mother's medical bills disappearing. It was too much to be coincidence. She turned onto her side, pulling her blanket closer. A strange mix of gratitude and uncertainty filled her chest. Everything she'd been struggling with for so long had been resolved in less than 24 hours. It felt like answered prayers, yet the speed and scale of it all left her wondering. Sleep finally began to creep in, and Nia's last conscious thought was a quiet prayer of thanks, for safety, for provision, and for the mysterious stranger who'd seemed to set it all in motion. The morning sun streamed through the office windows as Nia settled at her desk, her fingers hovering over her keyboard. Something felt different today. The usual morning chatter seemed to include her name more often, and when she walked past the break room, several senior managers had actually nodded in her direction. "Hey, Nia," called Marcus from accounting, waving a paper in his hand. "Just saw your cost analysis for the Miller project. Really solid work there." Nia blinked in surprise. She'd submitted that report 3 months ago, and it had vanished into the corporate void without a whisper. Oh, thanks, Marcus. Opening her email, she found her inbox cluttered with meeting invitations and project threads she'd never been included in before. Her name appeared on distribution lists typically reserved for senior analysts. She rubbed her eyes, wondering if she was still asleep. Did you see you're on the Innovation Committee now? Her cubicle neighbor, Jenny, leaned over with an impressed smile. That's usually just for team leads. Nia's stomach tightened. None of this made sense. First the loans, then the hospital bills, and now this sudden visibility at work? She took a deep breath, trying to ground herself. The morning passed in a blur of unexpected acknowledgements and surprising inclusions. By lunchtime, Nia had been invited to 3 strategy meetings and copied on 2 executive summaries. She was organizing her notes for the afternoon project review when the conference room door opened and conversations stopped mid-sentence. Everett Klein, the CEO, walked in. Nia had only seen him from a distance at company gatherings. He was tall, with broad shoulders and steel-grey eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Something about his presence tugged at her memory, but she couldn't place why. Please, continue, he said, taking a seat at the back of the room. His voice was deep and measured. Throughout the meeting, Nia presented her section on market analysis, hyper-aware of his steady gaze. When she finished, he asked 2 precise questions about her methodology, nodded at her answers, and remained silent for the rest of the session. As everyone filed out, Nia overheard whispers, "He never comes to mid-level meetings. Must be something big brewing." Back at her desk, Nia's hands trembled slightly as she typed. The weight of unexpected attention pressed on her shoulders. She'd worked hard for years, done everything right, stayed late, came in early. But this sudden spotlight felt unearned, almost uncomfortable. By 5 o'clock, her head was spinning. She gathered her things, needing the comfort of familiar walls and quiet prayers. The church was only a few blocks away, and her feet carried her there automatically, seeking sanctuary. The evening service had ended, but a few faithful lingered in the pews. Sister Pauline sat in her usual spot, her silver hair catching the light from stained glass windows. The elderly woman looked up as Nia approached, patting the space beside her with a knowing smile. "Something's troubling you, child," Sister Pauline said. It wasn't a question. Nia sank onto the wooden bench, her shoulders dropping. "I don't understand what's happening, sister. It's like someone waved a magic wand over my life. My mother's medical bills, my student loans, and now at work." She twisted her hands in her lap. "It feels too good to be true." Sister Pauline's wise eyes crinkled at the corners. "The Lord works in mysterious ways, dear one, but he also gave us discernment for a reason. What do you mean? Blessings are meant to be received with gratitude," Sister Pauline said, her weathered hands folding carefully in her lap. "But that doesn't mean we shouldn't examine their source. Sometimes help comes with strings attached, not all of them visible to the eye." Nia thought about the CEO's penetrating gaze, the sudden doors opening at work, the mysterious disappearance of her debts. How do I know what's a genuine blessing and what's something else? "Start with prayer," Sister Pauline advised gently. "And remember, true blessings bring peace, not just relief. If your spirit is unsettled, there might be more to understand." They sat together in comfortable silence, the church's ancient walls holding space for Nia's churning thoughts. Through the windows, the sky had turned dusky purple, stars beginning to peek through. "Thank you, sister," Nia finally said, standing to leave. "I'll pray about it." "That's right, child. And remember, you don't have to have all the answers today. Sometimes clarity comes in its own time." Walking home, Nia lifted her face to the evening air. "Lord," she whispered, "if these are your blessings, help me receive them with grace, and if they're not, give me wisdom to see clearly." High above, in a corner office overlooking the city, a tall figure stood at the window, watching a small form make its way down the twilight streets. But Nia, wrapped in her thoughts and prayers, never thought to look up. The morning sun streamed through the glass walls of the modern office building as Nia made her way to the break room, her mind busy with the details of her latest project. The past few days had felt surreal, like someone had pressed fast forward on her career while she wasn't looking. Her footsteps slowed as she approached the break room, hearing voices drift through the partially open door. "Special instructions from the top regarding Rowan's work," a man's voice said. Nia froze mid-step, her hand hovering over the door handle. She recognized the voice as belonging to Marcus Chen, one of the senior VPs. "Yeah, and did you see how fast that loan thing went through? Never seen accounting move that quick." Another executive responded with a chuckle. Nia's heart began to pound. She backed away from the door, her throat suddenly dry. The paper cup she'd been holding crumpled slightly in her grip. Special instructions? Loan thing? The pieces started forming a disturbing puzzle in her mind. Back at her desk, Nia's fingers flew across her keyboard. She pulled up the approval chain for her recent project, something she hadn't thought to check in her excitement. There it was. Final sign-off from the CEO's office, dated just hours after the night of the robbery. She dug deeper, looking at the timestamps on her newly granted system access permissions. All of them traced back to early morning requests from executive leadership. Her hands began to shake. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't blessing. This was intervention. The quarterly all-hands meeting was scheduled for that afternoon. Nia sat in the back row of the large conference room, barely hearing the financial updates and team achievements being discussed. Her eyes were fixed on the tall figure standing at the podium, Everett Klein, CEO of the company. She studied his face, his stance, the way he held himself. How had she not seen it before? The same broad shoulders that had stood between her and danger that night. The same deep voice that had spoken calm words while she tried to remember how to breathe. The same quiet authority that had made two armed men back away. Memories crashed over her like waves. The coat he'd draped around her shoulders. The gentle way he'd asked if she was all right. The mysterious disappearance before she could thank him properly. Her laptop screen blurred as tears threatened to form. Gratitude warred with confusion and hurt in her chest. Yes, he'd saved her life, but then he'd proceeded to reshape it without her knowledge or consent. Every blessing she'd thanked God for had been orchestrated by a man who apparently thought he could play puppet master with her life. The meeting ended, and Nia watched Klein gather his things, chatting easily with board members. He looked so normal, so professional, not at all like someone who'd been secretly pulling strings behind the scenes of an employee's life. Her fingers trembled as she opened her email. She had to know why, had to understand what gave him the right to intervene so thoroughly in her life without even telling her who he was. The cursor blinked at her as she composed a message. "Mr. Klein, I would appreciate a few minutes of your time for a private meeting at your earliest convenience. It's regarding some recent changes to my project status and financial matters. Regards, Nia Rowan." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came less than 5 minutes later. "Available. At 4 Dundas p.m. today, if that works for you, my office. EK." The next 2 hours were the longest of Nia's life. She stared at spreadsheets without seeing them, attempted to read emails 3 times before understanding their content, and jumped every time someone walked past her desk. Her mind kept circling back to that rainy night, replaying every detail with new understanding. At 3:45, Nia stood in the women's restroom, studying her reflection. The face that looked back at her was composed, professional, but her eyes held questions she wasn't sure she wanted answered. She straightened her navy blazer, touched the small cross necklace at her throat for courage, and took a deep breath. "Lord, give me wisdom," she whispered. "Help me understand." The executive floor was quiet when she stepped out of the elevator. The plush carpet muffled her footsteps as she approached the CEO's corner office. His assistant's desk was empty, probably gone for the day. The glass door bore his name in simple letters: Everett Kline, Chief Executive Officer. Nia's hand hovered over the door handle. Through the glass, she could see him standing at the window, his back to the door, looking out over the city. The same position he'd been in that night, standing between her and harm. Only now, she wasn't sure if he was a protector or someone who had violated her trust in the most well-intentioned way possible. She knocked softly, watching as he turned. Their eyes met through the glass, and in that moment she saw recognition flash across his face. He knew that she knew. The careful distance he'd maintained these past days vanished in an instant of shared understanding. Nia opened the door, her heart thundering in her chest. The questions that had been building all afternoon pressed against her lips, demanding answers. But first she had to hear him say it, had to know for certain. "Mr. Kline," she said, proud that her voice remained steady. "Thank you for meeting with me." He gestured to one of the chairs in front of his desk, his expression unreadable. "Please sit down, Ms. Rowan." The leather chair creaked softly as she sat, her spine straight, hands folded in her lap. The office was quiet enough that she could hear the soft hum of the building's ventilation system. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the polished surface of his desk. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words and unanswered questions. Nia could feel the weight of truth pressing down, waiting to be acknowledged. Everything she'd believed about the past few days' blessings hung in the balance. She just needed to find the courage to speak the words that would change everything. Nia's heels clicked against the polished floors of the executive wing, each step echoing her racing heartbeat. The morning sun streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the corridor. She smoothed her navy blazer, drew in a deep breath, and knocked on the heavy wooden door marked Everett Kline, CEO. "Come in," called a familiar voice, too familiar now. She stepped into the spacious corner office, her fingers clasped tightly together. Everett stood behind his desk, tall and composed in a charcoal suit. Their eyes met, and recognition flickered between them like electricity. "Ms. Rowan," he said softly, "please, have a seat." Nia sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk, her back straight, her expression carefully neutral. "Thank you for meeting with me, Mr. Kline." Everett moved around his desk and leaned against it, closer to her, but still maintaining a respectful distance. "I think we both know why you're here." "It was you that night," Nia said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You were the stranger who helped me during the robbery." He nodded slowly. "Yes. And everything else? My loan, my mother's medical bills, my sudden career advancement?" The words tasted bitter in her mouth. Everett's expression softened. "After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about what you'd been through, the fear in your eyes, the way you were trying to be so brave." He ran a hand through his dark hair. "I have resources, influence. I couldn't just walk away knowing you were struggling." "So you investigated me?" Nia's voice cracked slightly. "Looked into my personal finances, my family situation. I wanted to help." "Without asking me?" Nia interrupted, her carefully maintained composure beginning to slip. "Without giving me any choice in the matter?" Everett straightened, his brows furrowing. "I thought, that's exactly it," Nia said, rising from her chair. "You thought, you decided, you acted, all without considering how it would make me feel to have someone puppet master my life from the shadows." She took a steadying breath, fighting back tears. "Do you know what it's like to be a black woman in corporate America? To have to work twice as hard just to be seen as competent? To constantly prove yourself worthy of being in the room?" Everett's face fell. "I never meant to undermine, but you did," Nia said firmly. "Every approval, every mysterious payment, every orchestrated opportunity, they weren't earned. They were handed down like charity from on high. Do you know what that does to someone's dignity?" She paced the office, her emotions finally spilling over. "I needed help that night, yes. And I'm grateful you were there. But what came after?" She shook her head. "I wanted to be respected, Mr. Klein. Not rescued. I wanted to be seen as a professional woman capable of handling her own life, not some damsel in distress waiting for a wealthy benefactor." Everett stood silent, his usual confidence wavering. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I thought I was protecting you. Protection shouldn't feel like control." Nia replied softly. "And kindness shouldn't come at the cost of someone's self-respect." She walked to the door, then turned back. "I'll be submitting a formal request to have my projects reassigned through the proper channels. Whatever opportunities come my way, I want to know I've earned them fairly." "Ms. Rowan," Everett called as she reached for the door handle. "Nia, please, thank you for your time, Mr. Klein," she said firmly, and left the office. The walk to her desk felt endless. Colleagues smiled and waved, but their friendly gestures now felt hollow, tainted by the knowledge that none of it was real. She managed to maintain her composure through the rest of the workday, focusing on her tasks with mechanical precision. That evening, she sat at her small desk at home, carefully typing out the formal request for project reassignment. Her hands trembled as she detailed her reasons, all professional, all proper, revealing nothing of the morning's confrontation. When the email was sent, the emotions she'd been holding back all day finally broke free. Nia sank onto her couch, wrapped her arms around herself, and let the tears fall. She cried for her wounded pride, for the dreams that now felt tarnished, for the helping hand that had turned into a puppet string. But beneath the tears, a steel core of determination remained. She would rebuild her career the right way, step by earned step. She would stand on her own 2 feet, even if those feet shook sometimes. And she would never again let anyone, no matter how well-meaning, take away her right to choose her own path. As the sun set outside her window, Nia wiped her eyes and whispered a quiet prayer, not for help this time, but for strength. She was exhausted, heartsore, and uncertain about tomorrow, but she was also sure of one thing. Her dignity was worth more than any amount of easy answers or comfortable solutions. She got up, made herself a cup of tea, and began reviewing job listings on her laptop. Whatever came next, it would be on her own terms. The path ahead might be harder, but it would be hers to walk, one independent step at a time. The morning sun cast long shadows through the office windows as Nia stood outside her manager's door, taking a deep breath to steady herself. Her hand hesitated for just a moment before knocking, her knuckles making a firm, decisive sound against the wood. "Come in," called Marcus Chen, her direct supervisor. Nia stepped into his office, her spine straight and her voice clear. "I need to discuss my current project assignments," she began, settling into the chair across from his desk. Marcus looked up from his computer screen, his expression curious. "Is everything all right? The executive team has been very pleased with your work lately." That's actually what I wanted to talk about. Nia folded her hands in her lap to keep them from fidgeting. I appreciate the opportunities I've been given, but I want to earn my way forward on my own merit. No special treatment, no executive fast-tracking. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying her carefully. That's unusual? Most people wouldn't turn down this kind of career boost. I know, but I need to know that every step forward is because of my own work, not because someone else pulled strings. Nia's voice remained steady, though her heart was racing. I'd like to be assigned projects through normal channels, just like everyone else. Well, Marcus said slowly, we do have a challenging analysis project for the West Coast expansion. It's understaffed and behind schedule. Most people are trying to avoid it, actually. I'll take it, Nia said immediately, and I'll deliver results without any special resources or intervention. That afternoon, Nia sat at her desk surrounded by scattered papers and spreadsheets, her computer screen filled with complex data sets. The West Coast project was even more challenging than she'd anticipated, but she felt a fierce determination as she dug into the work. Colleagues walked past her desk, some throwing curious glances her way. She could hear the whispers about her sudden rise and equally sudden step back from the spotlight. But Nia kept her eyes on her screen, focused entirely on the task at hand. As evening approached and the office began to empty, Nia remained at her desk. Her coffee had long gone cold, but she barely noticed as she pieced together patterns in the market analysis data. The cleaning staff arrived, vacuuming around her desk as she continued working. When she finally packed up her things at 9 o'clock that night, her eyes were tired, but her spirit was strong. On her walk home, she passed the corner where Everett had saved her that rainy night. The memory no longer filled her with confusion. Instead, it strengthened her resolve. At home, Nia pulled out her journal, a simple leather-bound book that had been her confidant through many challenges. She settled onto her small couch, wrapped in her favorite blanket, and began to write. Dear God, thank you for giving me the strength to stand up for myself. Today, it would be so easy to accept the help, to take the easier path. But I know that true growth comes from facing challenges head-on. Her pen moved steadily across the page as she poured out her thoughts and prayers. The next morning, Nia arrived early at the office, determined to make progress before the daily meetings began. She noticed immediately that her access to certain executive resources had been removed, exactly as she'd requested. Instead of feeling disappointed, she felt relieved. Throughout the day, she faced small but telling changes. Meeting invitations that had flooded her calendar last week stopped appearing. Some colleagues who had suddenly become overly friendly now returned to their previous professional distance. But others, particularly those who had worked with her before all the changes, showed a new respect in their eyes. During the team status meeting, Nia presented her initial findings on the West Coast project. Her voice was clear and confident as she outlined the challenges and her proposed solutions. She noticed Marcus nodding approvingly as she handled difficult questions without hesitation. That evening, as she worked late again, she caught a glimpse of Everett walking past the glass walls of the office. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave her a small, understanding nod before continuing on his way. There was no interference, no special treatment, just professional respect. In her journal that night, Nia wrote, "Sometimes the hardest thing is turning down help, even when you know it's the right thing to do. But my worth isn't measured by who helps me or what advantages I'm given. It's measured by the strength I find within myself, by staying true to my principles even when it would be easier not to." The next few days fell into a challenging but satisfying rhythm. Nia arrived early each morning, tackled the complex project requirements head-on, and stayed late when needed. She reached out to colleagues for information. Through proper channels, built relationships through genuine interaction rather than executive mandate, and slowly began to see real progress in her work. Some nights doubt would creep in as she wrote in her journal. Was she foolish to turn down such valuable help? But then she would remember Sister Pauline's words about discernment, about understanding the difference between a blessing and a test of character. "Dear God," she wrote one evening, "thank you for helping me see that sometimes saying no to help is saying yes to growth. My path may be harder this way, but it's truly mine. Every step forward, every small victory belongs completely to the person you created me to be." During team meetings, Nia noticed that people began to truly listen when she spoke, not because of any executive backing, but because her insights were valuable and her work was solid. The respect she earned felt fundamentally different from the attention she'd received before. It felt real, earned, and lasting. Even when she hit roadblocks or faced resistance, Nia maintained her composure. She documented everything meticulously, worked through problems systematically, and kept her focus on delivering results rather than seeking recognition. Each evening, her journal entries became a mixture of professional reflection and spiritual grounding. "Today was hard," she wrote one night, "but hard doesn't mean wrong. Every challenge I face on my own makes me stronger. Every obstacle I overcome proves that I am capable. My worth isn't in the help I receive, but in the person I am becoming." The morning sun streamed through the office windows as Nia sat at her desk, surrounded by stacks of reports and spreadsheets. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, determination evident in every keystroke. The past few days had been challenging, but there was something empowering about doing things the right way, the hard way. "Hey, Nia," called Marcus from the next cubicle. "Those numbers you ran, for the Wilson account. Marketing wants to use them in their next campaign. Said it was exactly what they needed." A small smile crossed her face. This was earned recognition, not engineered approval. "Thanks, Marcus. Let them know if they need any additional breakdowns." Throughout the morning, similar moments accumulated like tiny victories. Team members began stopping by her desk again, this time with genuine questions about her methodology. The whispers about special treatment had faded, replaced by quiet appreciation for her work ethic. During lunch, Nia sat alone in the break room, reviewing a particularly complex dataset while eating her sandwich. She didn't notice Janet, the head of community outreach, watching her with interest. "Mind if I join you?" Janet asked, sliding into the seat across from her. Nia looked up, surprised. "Of course not." Janet set down her coffee cup, studying Nia thoughtfully. "I've been following your work on demographic analysis. The way you break down neighborhood patterns is impressive." "Thank you," Nia replied carefully, remembering times when praise had come with hidden strings. "We're launching a new initiative," Janet continued. "Working with community centers in underserved areas, helping them use data to apply for grants and improve services. We need someone who understands both the numbers and the human element." She paused. "Would you be interested in helping lead the project?" Nia's heart skipped a beat. This was exactly the kind of meaningful work she'd always wanted to do. But she had to ask, "Why me?" Janet smiled. "Because you're good at what you do, and because I've watched how you handled yourself these past few days. That kind of integrity is rare." Tears pricked at Nia's eyes, but she blinked them away. "I would love to help," she said softly. "Wonderful. We'll set up a proper meeting next week to discuss details." Janet stood, then added, "This came through normal channels, by the way. No special approvals needed." After Janet left, Nia sat back in her chair, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. This was what real achievement felt like. Earned through merit, not manufactured by intervention. Meanwhile, in his top-floor office, Everett Klein stood at his window, absently watching the city below. His assistant had just delivered a report detailing the community outreach initiative. Seeing Nia's name listed as project lead stirred something in him. Pride, but also a deeper understanding that humbled him. He thought back to that rainy night, how instinctively he'd wanted to protect her. In the days that followed, he'd wielded his power like a shield, trying to build walls against any harm that might come her way. But now he saw how that impulse, however well-intentioned, had been its own kind of violation. Everett walked to his desk and sat heavily in his chair. On his computer screen, a photo from the company directory showed Nia's professional headshot. Her smile confident, her eyes direct. He remembered how that smile had dimmed when she confronted him about his interference, how her voice had trembled with controlled anger as she demanded her dignity back. "Mr. Klein?" His assistant poked her head in. "The board meeting starts in 5 minutes. He nodded, gathering his papers, but his mind stayed on the lesson he was learning. All his life, he'd equated power with protection. His wealth, his position, his influence. These were tools he'd used to fix problems, to shield people, to make things right. But watching Nia these past few days had shown him something different. In the elevator heading to the conference room, Everett remembered how she'd walked into work that first morning after their confrontation. Head high, shoulders back, ready to start over from scratch. He'd seen real strength then, not in displays of power, but in the quiet dignity of someone choosing their own path. Throughout the day, subtle reports reached him about Nia's work. She'd stayed late, completing a difficult analysis. She'd helped a junior colleague understand a complex report. She'd spoken up in a department meeting with insights that changed the project's direction. Each story showed him what he'd almost smothered with his misguided protection. As evening approached, Everett found himself thinking about love. Real love, not the controlling impulse he'd mistaken for it. Real love, he was beginning to understand, meant respecting someone's right to face their own challenges. It meant trusting their strength instead of trying to be their strength. He watched through his office window as employees began leaving for the day. Nia emerged from the building below, walking with purpose towards the bus stop. No car service today, no special arrangements, just a capable woman making her way in the world on her own terms. The sight filled him with an unfamiliar mixture of admiration and regret. He'd tried to play savior and ended up learning about true strength instead. Power could protect someone for a moment, but it couldn't, shouldn't, try to shield them from living their own life. "Sir," his assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Your next appointment is here." "Thank you," he replied, turning from the window. As he prepared for his meeting, Everett felt something shift inside him, a new understanding taking root. True love, he realized, wasn't about control at all. It was about respect, about holding space for someone's journey without trying to direct it. The realization hit him with the force of truth. In trying to protect Nia, he'd almost diminished the very strength that made her who she was. The same strength that now, ironically, was teaching him what real power looked like. Not the power to control, but the power to stand tall in one's own truth. The setting sun cast long shadows through the glass walls of the office building's lobby. Nia gathered her papers from the Community Data Initiative meeting, tucking them carefully into her leather portfolio. The meeting had gone well. Her research on technological access in underserved neighborhoods had resonated with community leaders and fellow team members alike. Her heels clicked against the polished floor as she walked toward the exit, her mind already racing with ideas for implementation. The lobby was nearly empty at this hour, quiet except for the gentle hum of the central air system and the distant sound of a vacuum cleaner somewhere on another floor. She didn't notice him at first. Everett Klein stood near the security desk, his suit jacket draped over one arm, speaking quietly with the evening guard. When he turned and their eyes met, Nia felt her steps falter slightly. She hadn't been this close to him since that day in his office when she'd told him how his interference made her feel. The guard nodded goodnight and moved away, leaving them alone in the vast lobby. Nia straightened her spine and continued walking, planning to offer a polite but distant greeting as she passed. But Everett took a small step forward, his expression both earnest and uncertain. "Ms. Rowan," he said softly, "do you have a moment?" Nia paused, clutching her portfolio like a shield. "Yes, Mr. Klein." He moved closer, but maintained a respectful distance. The setting sun caught his face, highlighting the tired lines around his eyes and mouth. "I've been wanting to speak with you about everything that happened." Nia's heart beat faster, but she kept her voice steady. "I appreciate that, but it isn't necessary. We've both moved forward." "Please," he said, and something in his tone made her really look at him. Gone was the confident CEO who thought he could fix everything with money and power. Instead, she saw someone who seemed to be struggling to find the right words. "I need to apologize properly." She glanced at the exit, then back at him. After a moment's consideration, she nodded once. "I was wrong," he began, his voice low and sincere. "Not about wanting to help. I'll never regret stepping in that night. But everything after." He shook his head. "I confused protection with control. I thought I could make everything better by throwing money and influence at the situation. I didn't stop to consider how that would affect you, your dignity, your sense of self." Nia listened, her grip on her portfolio loosening slightly. The sun had dipped lower, painting the lobby in shades of amber and gold. "These past few weeks," he continued, "watching you work, truly work, on your own terms, has taught me something important, about strength, about respect." He met her eyes directly. "You don't need anyone to clear your path. You're more than capable of making your own way." "Yes," Nia said quietly. "I am." She took a deep breath, feeling some of the tension she'd been carrying begin to ease. "But that doesn't mean I don't appreciate what you did that night. Stepping in when I was in danger, that was different. That was human kindness, not control." Everett nodded, relief flickering across his features. "I've watched you lead this community initiative. The way you listen to people, really hear their needs instead of assuming you know what's best for them. It's exactly what I failed to do with you." A small smile touched Nia's lips. "Sometimes the hardest part of helping others is remembering they need to help themselves too." "You've shown me that very clearly," he said, a hint of rueful humor in his voice. "Your resilience, your dedication to earning everything through your own merit, it's admirable and humbling." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the golden light fading to purple dusk outside. Nia felt the weight of their shared experience settle into something lighter, cleaner. "Thank you for the apology, Mr. Klein," she said finally. "I accept it." He inclined his head, understanding the boundaries still firmly in place. "Thank you for hearing me out, Ms. Rowan. Have a good evening." "You too." They moved apart naturally, Nia continuing towards the exit while Everett turned toward the elevators. As she pushed through the revolving door into the evening air, she felt different, not completely healed, but clearer. The conversation hadn't erased the past, but it had acknowledged it honestly. The street was quiet as she walked to her car, the first stars appearing in the darkening sky above. She thought about how far she'd come since that rainy night, not because of anyone else's intervention, but because of her own strength and determination. Yet she could also acknowledge that sometimes help came in different forms. The key was recognizing the difference between support and control, between assistance and interference. Reaching her car, Nia paused with her hand on the door handle. She could see Everett through the lobby windows, waiting for the elevator, his posture more relaxed than before. They had both learned something valuable from this experience. She had learned to stand firmly in her own worth, and he had learned that true respect meant allowing others to stand on their own. The elevator doors opened and he stepped inside, disappearing from view. Nia got into her car, placed her portfolio on the passenger seat, and sat quietly for a moment. The encounter had left her feeling surprisingly peaceful. Not everything was resolved, perhaps it never would be completely, but something had shifted. They had found a way to acknowledge the past while maintaining professional boundaries, to express gratitude and regret without becoming entangled. As she started her car, Nia thought about tomorrow's tasks, the community initiative, her regular projects, the countless small interactions that made up her daily work life. She would continue doing everything exactly as she had been, with dignity, with determination, and on her own terms. But now there was one less weight on her shoulders, one less uncertainty to navigate. The city lights were coming on as she pulled out of the parking lot, creating a gentle glow against the deepening twilight. She felt steady, centered, ready to face whatever came next. Not because someone else had cleared the way, but because she knew her own strength. Nia first noticed the whispers during her morning team meeting, sideways glances, conversations that stopped when she walked by. The temperature in the office seemed to have dropped 10 degrees overnight. Sarah from marketing barely met her eyes when handing over the project files. "Here's what you asked for," she mumbled, hurrying away before Nia could thank her. Settling at her desk, Nia opened her email and felt her stomach clench. Subject line: Mandatory Ethics Review Meeting, 2 p.m. today. The message was formal, cold. It mentioned concerns raised about professional conduct and investigation of potential impropriety. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down her coffee cup. Through her office window, she could see small groups of co-workers huddled in discussion, some openly staring in her direction. The rumors had clearly spread fast. "Did you hear?" A voice drifted over from the break room. "They're saying she somehow got decline. Special treatment, project approvals, even money." Nia's chest tightened, but she forced herself to breathe slowly, remembering Sister Pauline's words about standing firm in truth. She opened her journal, the one where she documented every project decision, every approval, every step she'd taken to rebuild her career the right way. Her phone buzzed, a text from her mother. "Remember who you are, baby girl. Remember whose you are." Tears pricked at her eyes, but Nia blinked them back. She wouldn't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Instead, she began methodically gathering her documentation. Project timelines, approval chains, meeting notes. Everything that proved she'd earned her position through merit alone. During lunch, she drove to her church, needing a moment of peace. The sanctuary was quiet, sunlight streaming through stained glass. Sister Pauline was there, arranging flowers at the altar. "Child, you look troubled," the older woman said, patting the pew beside her. Nia sank down, her professional composure cracking slightly. "They're saying I manipulated my way to success. That I used Mr. Klein somehow." Her voice caught. "Everything I've worked for, every boundary I've set, they're twisting it all around." Sister Pauline's weathered hand covered hers. "The truth has a way of standing firm when everything else falls away. You know who you are. More importantly, God knows who you are." "I'm scared," Nia admitted quietly. "I've worked so hard to do things the right way, to earn respect honestly." "Fear is natural," Sister Pauline said, "but don't let it rule you. You have something stronger than fear. You have faith, integrity, and the power of truth. Back at the office, Nia straightened her jacket and walked tall past the whispers. She organized her documentation chronologically, adding notes about each decision's context and justification. When her computer chimed at 1:45 p.m., she gathered her materials and headed to the conference room. The Ethics Committee, 3 senior managers and HR, sat waiting. Their faces were carefully neutral. Nia noticed Everett wasn't present, and she was grateful. This was her battle to fight. "Ms. Rowan," the head of HR began, "serious concerns have been raised about potential impropriety in your rapid advancement and project assignments. There are allegations of manipulation of leadership for personal gain." Nia met their eyes steadily. "I understand, and I'm prepared to address each concern with full documentation." For the next hour, she walked them through every project, every decision, every achievement. Her voice remained clear and professional as she showed how each success was earned through merit, how she had specifically requested normal channels and refused special treatment. "Additionally," she said, opening her final folder, "I have emails showing where I formally requested reassignment of projects that I felt had been inappropriately fast-tracked. I believed then, as I do now, that true success must be earned with integrity." The committee members exchanged glances. The HR director leaned forward. "Ms. Rowan, why didn't you come to us when you first suspected preferential treatment?" "I handled it directly and professionally with all parties involved," Nia replied. "I took immediate steps to correct the situation and have since worked exclusively through standard procedures. Every project outcome, every deliverable, every success has been achieved through proper channels and documented work." She could feel exhaustion creeping in, but she kept her spine straight, her voice steady. The weight of her mother's faith, Sister Pauline's wisdom, and her own hard-won dignity gave her strength. "Furthermore," she continued, "I would welcome any additional review of my work products and decision processes. I have nothing to hide and everything to prove." The questioning continued, probing and thorough. Nia answered each query with calm clarity, even as the afternoon light faded to evening. She didn't mention Everett's initial intervention or the mugging. Those details weren't relevant to her professional conduct since then. When the meeting finally ended, Nia gathered her materials with steady hands. The committee would review everything and reach their conclusions soon. She had done all she could, presented her truth, stood her ground, maintained her dignity. Walking back to her desk, she heard the whispers start again, but this time she held her head high. Let them talk. She knew who she was, what she had earned, and how she had earned it. Her worth wasn't determined by rumors or others' assumptions. At her desk, she found a small note from her team's junior analyst. "We believe in you, Ms. Rowan." The simple show of support brought a warm smile to her face. Nia packed up her things as the office emptied for the day. Tomorrow would bring what it would bring. But tonight she would go home, pray with her mother, and rest in the knowledge that she had faced this challenge with grace and truth. The security guard nodded respectfully as she left the building. "Keep your head up, Ms. Rowan." "Always," she replied softly, stepping into the evening air. The sky was painted in deep purples and golds, reminding her of Sister Pauline's words about truth standing firm. Whatever the outcome, she had remained true to herself and her principles. That was a victory no rumor could take away. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the glass-walled conference room as Nia smoothed her navy blazer and took her seat before the ethics review panel. 3 senior executives sat across from her, their faces neutral but scrutinizing. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but she kept her shoulders straight and her expression composed. A quiet murmur rippled through the room as Everett Klein entered, taking a seat near the back. His presence drew curious glances, but he simply nodded to the panel and said, "I'm here to ensure Ms. Rowan receives the same fair process as any employee would." Naya felt a complex mix of emotions at his words. Gratitude that he hadn't tried to intervene behind the scenes, yet lingering wariness about his presence. She took a deep breath and focused on the manila folder containing her documentation. "Ms. Rowan," began Patricia Chen, the head of HR, "serious concerns have been raised about your rapid advancement and project approvals. We need to address allegations of improper influence." Nia's voice remained steady as she opened her folder. "I understand, and I welcome the chance to present the facts." She pulled out her first document, a detailed timeline of her project submissions and approvals. "I'd like to start with my original proposal from 6 months ago." For the next hour, Nia methodically walked through her work history. She showed email threads documenting her original ideas, meeting notes revealing her consistent advocacy for underserved communities, and data proving the business value of her initiatives. Her hands trembled slightly as she handled the papers, but her voice grew stronger with each point she made. "The Community Data Initiative wasn't my idea alone," she explained, "but I recognized its potential because I've lived in these neighborhoods. I understand both the challenges and the opportunities." She gestured to a chart showing preliminary results. "The pilot program is already showing a 15% increase in community engagement." From his corner, Everett watched her presentation with quiet admiration. He saw how she'd built her case on facts and merit, requiring no intervention from him or anyone else. The whispers about favoritism fell flat against her clear timeline of accomplishments. One of the panel members, James Morton from Legal, leaned forward. "And what about the timing of your loan payoffs? That coincided with several project approvals." Nia met his gaze directly. "I was as surprised as anyone by those payments. I never requested special financial consideration, and I've since asked that all my projects be reassigned through standard channels." She pulled out another document. "Here are the emails documenting that request." The afternoon light had shifted to a warm, golden glow by the time the panel finished their questions. Nia's throat felt dry, but she'd answered everything with unwavering honesty. As the panel conferred in whispered tones, she closed her eyes briefly and said a silent prayer. Patricia Chen cleared her throat. "Ms. Rowan, we've reviewed all the evidence thoroughly. Your documentation clearly shows a pattern of consistent, high-quality work that predates any unusual approvals. Furthermore, your voluntary request to have projects reassigned demonstrates professional integrity." Nia's shoulders relaxed slightly as Patricia continued. "We find no evidence of improper influence. Your work stands on its own merit, and your name is cleared of all allegations." Relief flooded through Nia's body, but she maintained her professional demeanor as she thanked the panel. As people filed out of the room, several colleagues stopped to offer quiet congratulations. Everett caught her eye briefly and gave a simple nod of respect before leaving. The sun had set by the time Nia made it home. She changed into comfortable clothes and stepped out onto her small balcony, wrapping herself in a soft throw blanket. The city lights twinkled below as she sank into her worn patio chair, finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of the day. Tears slipped down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from sheer emotional exhaustion. She'd stood her ground, defended her work, and won fairly. Yet the victory felt hollow against the hurt of having her integrity questioned in the first place. Nia hugged her knees to her chest, looking up at the few visible stars peeking through the city's glow. The cool night air carried the distant sounds of traffic and life below. She thought about how much had changed in just a few weeks, the attack, the mysterious help, the revelation about Everett, and now this challenge to her reputation. Her mother had always told her that faith was tested not in easy times, but in moments of struggle. Nia understood that now more than ever. She'd relied on her faith to stay strong today, but trust felt more complicated. Trust in colleagues, in fairness, in her own judgment. All of it felt fragile and uncertain. The wind rustled the potted plants on her balcony as she wiped her eyes. The relief of being cleared competed with a bone-deep weariness. Hope had always been her anchor, the force that kept her working 2 jobs, pursuing her education, caring for her mother. But tonight, hope felt like a delicate thing, as tentative as the first green shoots pushing through soil in spring. She pulled her blanket tighter, watching the city lights blur through her tears. The victory was real, her name was cleared, but her heart still felt tender and uncertain. She didn't know if she could trust hope to guide her forward again without fear of being hurt or disappointed. The morning sunlight streamed through the office windows, casting long shadows across the conference room table. Nia sat straight-backed in her chair, hands folded neatly in her lap as she listened to Patricia Chen address the gathered team members. Following yesterday's review, and in light of the Community Data Initiative's success, we're implementing some organizational changes, Patricia announced, her voice carrying clear authority. She smiled warmly at Nia. Ms. Rowan has demonstrated exceptional leadership capabilities and analytical insight. The pilot program's results speak for themselves. Nia watched as Patricia clicked through several slides showing the initiative's impact. Increased community participation, improved data collection, and positive feedback from neighborhood leaders. These were results Nia had worked hard to achieve, long before any special attention or help. Therefore, Patricia continued, we're creating a new position, Director of Community Analytics and Engagement. This role will oversee the expansion of the pilot program across all our target neighborhoods. She paused, turning to face Nia directly. Ms. Rowan, we'd like to offer you this position, based purely on your demonstrated abilities and achievements. The room fell quiet. Nia felt a warm glow of pride spread through her chest, not the uncomfortable flush of receiving unearned attention, but the deep satisfaction of recognition properly won. She noticed several colleagues nodding in approval, including some who had seemed skeptical just days before. Thank you, Nia replied, her voice steady and clear. I'd be honored to accept the position and continue building on what we've started. After the meeting, colleagues stopped by her desk to offer genuine congratulations. This time, their words felt different, based on respect rather than speculation about favoritism. Even James from legal dropped by to shake her hand, his previous suspicion replaced by professional regard. By early afternoon, Nia had wrapped up her immediate tasks and headed to the hospital to visit her mother. The familiar antiseptic smell greeted her as she walked down the corridor, but today it didn't seem as harsh. She carried a small bouquet of yellow daisies, her mother's favorites, and the weight of good news in her heart. Her mother was sitting up in bed, working on a crossword puzzle when Nia entered. "There's my girl," she said, her face lighting up. "You're practically glowing today." Nia arranged the daisies in a vase by the window before settling into the chair beside the bed. "I got some news today, Mama." She shared the details of the promotion, watching her mother's eyes grow bright with pride. "Now that's what I call a blessing earned," her mother said, reaching for Nia's hand. Her grip was weak, but warm. "Tell me more about this program you're running." For the next hour, Nia explained the initiative, describing how it would help communities like the one she'd grown up in. Her mother listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and offering insights from her years of community involvement before her illness. "You know what this reminds me of?" her mother said finally, setting aside her water cup. "Remember when you were in middle school and that teacher told you you weren't ready for advanced math?" Nia nodded, remembering the sting of that moment. "But instead of getting angry or giving up, you just kept doing your work, showed up every day with your assignments perfect, raised your hand with all the right answers until they couldn't ignore your ability anymore." Her mother's eyes crinkled with pride. "That's what I call strength with grace. I learned it from you, Mama," Nia said softly. "The way you always handled things at church, in the neighborhood, never letting anyone push you around, but never losing your dignity either." Her mother squeezed her hand. "Strength and grace aren't opposites, baby. They're partners, like your left hand and your right. You need both to hold on to what matters." Nia felt something settle in her chest, like puzzle pieces clicking into place. The uncertainty that had plagued her these past weeks began to fade. She realized she didn't need to choose between being strong and being gracious, between accepting help and maintaining dignity. "I think I finally understand what you've been trying to teach me all these years," Nia said, smoothing her mother's blanket. "About standing firm in who you are while keeping your heart open." Her mother nodded, wisdom deep in her tired eyes. "Sounds like you found your footing again." And she had. For the first time since that rainy night of the attack, Nia felt truly grounded. Her success wasn't built on someone else's intervention or protection. It was founded on her own abilities, her own hard work, her own grace under pressure. She had earned every step forward, and that knowledge felt like solid ground beneath her feet. They spent the rest of the visiting hours talking about plans for the program, sharing memories, and working together on the crossword puzzle. When the nurse came to check vitals, Nia gathered her things, kissing her mother's forehead before leaving. "I'm proud of you, baby," her mother said as Nia reached the door. "Not just for the promotion, but for how you've handled everything. You've shown them exactly who you are." Nia smiled, feeling centered and whole. The sunlight through the hospital windows felt warm on her face, and her steps were sure as she walked down the corridor. She had found her balance, not lifted by someone else's hands, but standing firmly on her own 2 feet, ready to move forward with both strength and grace. The afternoon light slanted through the windows of the modern office building, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Nia sat at her desk, reviewing the final paperwork for her new leadership position. Her dark curls were pulled back neatly, and her posture reflected both exhaustion and pride from the events of the past few days. A gentle knock on her office door made her look up. Everett Klein stood in the doorway, his tall frame somewhat less imposing than usual. He wasn't wearing his usual suit jacket, and his sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, a rare sight that made him appear more human than CEO. "Do you have a moment?" he asked, his voice quieter than his usual authoritative tone. "Not as your CEO, but just as myself." Nia's hand stilled on her keyboard. She took a deep breath, centering herself before nodding. "Come in." Everett stepped inside, but didn't immediately sit down. Instead, he moved to the window, gazing out at the city skyline for a moment before turning to face her. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began, running a hand through his dark hair, a gesture that spoke of uncertainty, so unlike his usual confident demeanor. "I want to apologize again," he continued, "but not for what you might think." He finally sat down in one of the chairs across from her desk, leaning forward slightly. "I'm not sorry I helped that night. I would do that again in a heartbeat. Not because you're weak, but because everyone deserves help when they're in danger." Nia's fingers curled around her pen, her knuckles whitening slightly. But I am deeply sorry for what came after." His voice carried a weight of genuine regret. "I assumed I knew what was best for you. I thought because I had the power to make things easier, I should. I never stopped to ask what you wanted or needed. I treated you like someone who needed saving rather than someone who deserved respect." Nia sat back in her chair, studying him. The late afternoon sun caught the silver at his temples, highlighting the humility in his expression. "You made me feel powerless," she said quietly. like all my hard work meant nothing compared to one person's influence. Everett nodded, accepting her words without defense. I know, and watching you these past weeks, seeing how you've handled everything with such grace and strength, it's taught me something important about humility. He smiled slightly, but it was self-deprecating rather than confident. I thought I was being kind, but real kindness doesn't strip away someone's dignity. No, Nia agreed. It doesn't. You've taught me more about leadership in the past few weeks than I've learned in years of running this company, he admitted. Real leadership isn't about wielding power. It's about empowering others to stand in their own strength. Nia felt something shift in her chest, a loosening of the tension she'd been carrying since that first confrontation in his office. Thank you for saying that. I mean every word. His blue eyes met hers directly, no trace of his executive persona present. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that your integrity, your determination to stand on your own terms, it's changed how I see things, how I see power, how I see strength. Nia was quiet for a long moment, considering his words. The honesty in them resonated with something deep inside her, the part that had been hurt not just by his actions, but by the assumption behind them. Here was a man with immense power, sitting in her office, admitting he had been wrong, not from a place of strategy, but from genuine understanding. I forgive you, she said finally, her voice clear and steady. The words didn't come from obligation or because of his position. They came from recognizing the truth in his humility, the genuine change in his perspective. Everett's shoulders relaxed slightly, though he hadn't seemed to realize they were tense. Thank you, he said simply, making no move to minimize or elaborate on her forgiveness. The late afternoon sun painted the office in warm golds and soft shadows. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, no longer CEO and employee, not victims of circumstance, just two people who had learned something valuable about strength, dignity, and the true meaning of helping others. Your new project starts tomorrow, Everett said finally, standing up. I look forward to seeing what you accomplish, on your own terms. Nia nodded, a small smile touching her lips. Thank you. For understanding that's what I needed all along. He returned her smile, ducking his head slightly in acknowledgement before turning to leave. At the door, he paused. You know, sometimes the strongest people aren't the ones who never need help. They're the ones brave enough to define how that help should look. And sometimes the wisest leaders, Nia responded, are the ones who can admit when they need to learn. The afternoon light slanted through the windows of the company cafeteria as Nia sat alone at her usual corner table, reviewing reports while eating her lunch. She glanced up briefly when a shadow fell across her papers, finding Everett standing there with his own lunch tray, his expression uncertain. May I join you? He asked simply. No trace of authority in his voice, despite his position as CEO. Nia considered for a moment, then nodded. Yes, you may. He settled into the chair across from her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. The cafeteria buzzed with activity around them, but their table felt like a quiet island amid the noise. I've been watching your work on the Community Data Initiative, he said, unwrapping his sandwich. The way you've structured the neighborhood outreach program is impressive. Thank you, Nia replied, noting how different this felt from their previous interactions. There was no power dynamic now, just two people sharing lunch and conversation. We're hoping to expand it to 3 more districts by next quarter. I'd like to hear more about that if you're willing to share. As Nia began explaining her vision for the project, she found herself relaxing slightly. Everett asked thoughtful questions, offering suggestions not as mandates, but as possibilities for her to consider. Their conversation flowed naturally into other topics. Books they'd read, experiences that had shaped them, the challenges of balancing ambition with compassion. Over the next few days, their lunch conversations became a quiet routine. Sometimes they discussed work, but more often they shared pieces of themselves. Nia told him about her mother's ongoing recovery and her weekend volunteer work at the church. Everett opened up about losing his father young and learning to lead through observation rather than instruction. I watched my mother run our family business after Dad died, he shared one afternoon, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. She taught me that true strength isn't about controlling situations, but about empowering others to find their own way. Nia smiled softly. That sounds like a wise woman. She would have liked you, he said, then added quickly. Your independence, your principles, they remind me of her. During another lunch, Nia found herself describing her childhood dreams of making a difference in her community. I used to think change only came from big gestures, she admitted. Now I see it's in the small daily choices, treating people with dignity, standing firm in your values even when it's hard. Everett nodded, understanding in his eyes. I made the mistake of thinking resources could solve everything. You showed me that respect and agency matter more than any amount of help given without permission. Their conversations weren't always easy. Sometimes old hurts surfaced, requiring careful navigation. During one lunch, Nia directly addressed the aftermath of his intervention in her life. I felt so powerless when I discovered what you'd done, she said quietly. Not because you meant harm, but because my choices were taken away. Even good intentions can wound when they override someone's autonomy. Everett listened intently, his face showing genuine remorse. I've learned that protection without partnership is just another form of control, he acknowledged. I'm grateful you had the courage to tell me that truth. As days passed, their interaction evolved into something neither had expected, a friendship built on mutual understanding and respect. They began having coffee in the morning sometimes, sharing ideas about company initiatives or discussing books they'd both read. Their conversations were punctuated by comfortable silences, neither feeling pressured to fill every moment with words. One afternoon, they took their lunch to the small courtyard outside the building. The spring air was mild, and other employees dotted the space, enjoying the weather. Nia noticed that nobody gave their table a second glance anymore. Their lunches together had become a normal sight. I've been thinking about what you said last week, Everett said, about how change happens in small moments. It reminded me of something my mother used to say, that relationships are built the same way, one honest conversation at a time. Nia considered this, watching a pair of sparrows hop across the courtyard. I think she was right. Trust isn't earned in grand gestures. It grows in quiet moments of listening and understanding. Like these lunches, he offered with a small smile. Like these lunches. She agreed, returning his smile with a genuine one of her own. They settled into a comfortable pattern of sharing and listening. Some days they discussed serious matters, company policies that needed updating, community challenges that required innovative solutions. Other days, their conversations were lighter, favorite movies, childhood memories, funny stories about their daily lives. During one particularly open discussion, Nia shared her experience of being a black woman in corporate America. It's not just about policies or promotions, she explained. It's about being heard, being seen as a whole person, rather than a representation or a token. Everett listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and acknowledging his own learning journey. I appreciate you trusting me enough to share these perspectives, he said. It helps me be a better leader and a better person. Their evolving friendship became a model of mutual respect within the company. Others noticed how they collaborated now, not as superior and subordinate, but as equals bringing different strengths to their shared goals. In meetings, they built on each other's ideas naturally, their previous tension replaced by professional harmony. One morning, as they sat in the courtyard with their coffee, Nia realized how far they'd come from that first confrontation in his office. The man beside her was no longer the CEO who had tried to fix her life, but a friend who had learned to listen and understand. And she was no longer the woman fighting for her dignity. She was simply herself, comfortable in both her strength and her ability to accept genuine friendship. "Thank you," she said suddenly, breaking their comfortable silence. "For what?" "For learning with me. For being willing to change and grow. It's not easy to examine our assumptions and let them go." Everett nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "Thank you for giving me the chance to learn, for showing me that real connection comes from respect, not rescue." The morning sun warmed their faces as they sat quietly, two people who had found their way to authentic friendship through the careful work of listening, learning, and choosing to see each other as equals. Their story had shifted from one of power and resistance to one of mutual understanding and genuine respect. The evening sun cast long shadows across the community center's parking lot as Nia stepped out of her car. She smoothed her navy blazer and took a deep breath, savoring the crisp autumn air. The sound of lively chatter and music drifted from the building's open doors, where colorful balloons marked the entrance for the Neighborhood Data Initiative's first community celebration. As she walked towards the entrance, she spotted Everett's tall figure waiting near the door. He wore casual clothes instead of his usual business suit, dark jeans and a gray sweater that made him look more approachable. When their eyes met, he smiled warmly, but didn't move to help her with her laptop bag. He had learned. "Good evening," he said simply, holding the door. "Evening," Nia replied with a small smile, walking through. They had found this new rhythm over the past week. Professional, friendly, but carefully. Balanced. No rescuing. No overstepping. Inside, the community center's main hall buzzed with energy. Local families gathered around information stations where Nia's team had set up displays showing neighborhood statistics, improvement plans, and opportunities for involvement. Children darted between tables decorated with bright tablecloths, while parents studied charts and asked questions of the staff. "Your team did an amazing job with the presentation," Everett commented as they walked through the room. "The data visualization makes complex information accessible to everyone." Nia nodded, watching a grandmother explain a graph to her granddaughter. That was the goal. Information shouldn't be locked away in spreadsheets. These are people's lives we're talking about, their schools, their safety, their future. They deserve to understand and be part of the conversation. They stopped at the education station, where a mother was examining statistics about local school funding, disparities. Her face showed concern as she traced the numbers with her finger. "Excuse me," the woman said when she noticed Nia. "Are these numbers current? Our school's library really has 50% fewer books per student than the district average." "Yes, ma'am," Nia answered, stepping closer to the display. "But if you look at this next chart, you'll see our proposed solution. We've identified grant opportunities and community partnerships that could help close that gap within 2 years." The woman's eyes lit up with hope. "Really? How can we help make that happen?" For the next 15 minutes, Nia walked her through the action plan, showing her where to sign up for the parent advocacy group. Everett stood quietly nearby, watching Nia in her element, confident, compassionate, and completely focused on empowering others. As they moved through the room, more people approached Nia. A teenager wanted to know about the coding boot camp program she'd helped arrange. A small business owner had questions about the microloan initiative. Each time, Nia listened intently and offered clear, practical guidance. She didn't just give answers, she helped people see their own power to create change. Near the refreshment table, they paused for a moment. Nia picked up a paper cup of lemonade, her throat dry from talking. "You know," Everett said softly, "watching you tonight, I'm reminded again how wrong I was to think you needed saving. You're not just surviving, you're helping others thrive." Nia took a slow sip before responding. "I appreciated your intent that night, Everett. Really, but this—" She gestured at the room full of engaged community members. "This is what real help looks like. Not doing things for people, but helping them find their own strength." They stood in comfortable silence, observing the scene before them. A group of children were clustered around the technology display, eyes wide with wonder as they tried out the educational tablets Nia's team had secured through corporate partnerships. Their parents watched proudly as they navigated the learning programs with natural ease. "Ms. Rowan?" A quiet voice drew their attention. A young girl, maybe 12 years old, stood nearby clutching a tablet. "I just wanted to say thank you. My mum says you're the reason we got these at school. I want to make apps like this someday." Nia knelt down to the girl's level, her heart full. "What's your name?" "Jasmine." "Well, Jasmine, I believe you absolutely can make apps someday. Have you signed up for our weekend coding workshop yet?" The girl's face fell slightly. "Mom says we probably can't afford it. The workshops are free," Nia explained gently. "That's what community partnership means, making sure everyone has access to opportunities. Should we go find your mom and get you registered?" Jasmine's brilliant smile could have lit up the room. As Nia walked her back to her mother, she felt Everett's gaze following her. When she returned, he was shaking his head slightly, a look of admiration in his eyes. "What?" she asked. "Just thinking about how much I'm learning from you," he replied, "about the difference between power and empowerment." Nia looked out at the crowd. Parents signing up for programs, kids exploring new possibilities, neighbors connecting with neighbors. This was what she'd always wanted to create. Not a rescue operation, but a community rising together. "It's not about being saved," she said quietly. "It's about having the resources and support to save ourselves, to build something lasting." A local pastor took the microphone then, calling everyone's attention for the formal presentation. As people gathered around, Nia felt a deep sense of rightness settle in her chest. Here she stood, not as someone's project or charity case, but as a leader who had earned her place through hard work and unwavering principles. Everett stayed by her side throughout the presentation, but his presence felt different now, like a colleague and friend rather than a protector. When community members approached afterward to share their stories and hopes, he stepped back naturally, letting Nia take the lead while offering support only when asked. As the evening wound down, Nia watched families gathering their materials and children, all buzzing with new possibilities. An elderly man stopped to shake her hand, tears in his eyes as he talked about his grandchildren finally having the same opportunities as kids in wealthier neighborhoods. A single mother thanked her for scheduling the job training programs around bus schedules and daycare hours. These moments, these real connections and practical changes meant more than any rescue ever could. Nia felt proud, not of being saved that rainy night months ago, but of staying true to her values and helping others find their way forward. She had turned a moment of vulnerability into a movement of strength, not by accepting help from above, but by building bridges across the community. Standing there in the warm light of the community center, watching people gather their hopes and plans to take home, Nia felt grounded in who she was. Not a damsel in distress, not a charity case, but a woman of purpose who had earned every step of her journey. Beside her, Everett stood quietly supportive, having learned to be present without overshadowing, to care without controlling. The evening air carried a gentle warmth as Nia stood beside Everett at the community center's outdoor gathering. String lights twinkled overhead, creating a soft glow that reminded her of stars. All around them, people mingled and chatted, their voices creating a pleasant hum of connection and purpose. Nia watched a young girl excitedly show her mother the coding project she'd created in one of the center's new tech programs. The girl's eyes sparkled with pride as she explained how she'd made the computer draw flowers on the screen. Her mother's face glowed with joy and wonder. "That's what it's all about, isn't it?" Everett said softly beside her. "Real change, one person at a time." Nia nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. It's amazing what people can do when they're given a fair chance. She turned to look at him, noting how different he seemed from the powerful CEO she'd first known. Here, in this community space, he stood relaxed and open, his usual formal posture replaced by something more genuine. A local teacher approached them, extending her hand to Nia. "Miss Rowan, I can't thank you enough for the new computer lab. My students are thriving with the resources you helped bring in." "The community made this happen," Nia replied warmly. "I just helped connect the dots." She felt Everett's quiet presence beside her, supportive, but not overshadowing. They moved through the crowd together, stopping to chat with volunteers and participants. Nia noticed how Everett listened intently to each person, asking thoughtful questions about their experiences and needs. He wasn't there as the CEO of a major corporation, but as someone who genuinely cared about making a difference. "Remember when you first proposed this initiative?" he asked during a quiet moment. "You saw possibilities that everyone else missed." Nia smiled, remembering those early presentations. "I saw what was needed because I lived it. Sometimes the best solutions come from understanding the problem from the inside out." A group of teenage boys demonstrated their robotics project, beaming with pride as their small creation successfully completed its task. One boy, who seemed particularly shy, found his voice as he explained the coding behind their work. Nia remembered being that age, full of dreams but uncertain about opportunities. "You've created something remarkable here," Everett said, gesturing to the bustling room. "This isn't just a program, it's hope in action." "We created it," Nia corrected gently. "All of us together." She paused, considering how far they'd come from that rainy night months ago. "You know, sometimes the best partnerships start when we stop trying to fix things for each other and start working beside each other instead." Everett's expression softened. "I needed that lesson. Still learning it, honestly." They walked toward the refreshment table, where Sister Pauline was serving her famous lemonade. The elderly woman's eyes twinkled as she handed them each a glass. "Well, if it isn't my two favorite people," she said with a knowing smile. "Doing good work together, I see." Nia took a sip of the tart, sweet drink, remembering Sister Pauline's wise words about discernment and blessings. "We're trying our best," she answered honestly. "That's all any of us can do, child," Sister Pauline replied, patting Nia's hand. "And sometimes our best work comes after our hardest lessons." The event continued into the evening, with presentations from various community groups showcasing their achievements. Nia felt a deep sense of satisfaction watching people share their stories of growth and success. This was what real empowerment looked like. Not handouts or secret interventions, but opportunities and support that allowed people to build their own paths. A local musician started playing soft guitar music in the corner, and the atmosphere grew more relaxed. Nia and Everett found themselves near the edge of the crowd, observing the scene together. "I'm glad you're here," Nia said quietly. Not as my boss, not as my rescuer, just here. Everett turned to face her, his expression earnest. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. You've shown me what real strength looks like, Nia. It's not about having power over others. It's about standing together, supporting each other's growth. They watched as parents gathered their children, volunteers started cleaning up, and the evening began winding down. The string lights continued to twinkle overhead, casting a gentle glow over the scene. In this moment, they weren't CEO and employee, or rescuer and rescued. They were simply two people who had learned to see each other clearly, standing together in the light of mutual understanding and respect. As they helped stack chairs and fold tables, working alongside other volunteers, Nia felt a profound sense of rightness. This was how change happened, not through grand gestures or hidden help, but through honest work and genuine partnership. She and Everett moved in sync, anticipating each other's needs, sharing small smiles as they worked. The community center gradually emptied, leaving behind the warm echo of laughter and connection. Outside, the city lights sparkled against the darkening sky, reminding Nia of how far she'd come from that frightening night months ago. But now, instead of fear and uncertainty, she felt strength and purpose, not just in herself, but in the bonds she'd built with others, including the man standing beside her. Together, they had learned that true connection couldn't be forced or bought. It had to grow naturally, built on trust, respect, and the willingness to see each other as equals. As they stood side by side, watching the last families leave the center, Nia knew that whatever came next, they would face it not as savior and saved, but as partners walking forward together. The early morning sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of Greater Hope Baptist Church, casting warm patches of red, blue, and gold across the wooden pews. Nia sat quietly, her fingers intertwined with Everett's, feeling the gentle pressure of his thumb brushing against her knuckles. The familiar scent of old hymnals and lemon wood polish filled the air as the choir's harmonies floated through the sanctuary. Sister Pauline sat 2 rows ahead, her silver-grey head nodding along to the music. Nia smiled, remembering the older woman's wise words about discernment and blessings. How right she had been. Some gifts needed to be questioned, even as they were appreciated. The past few months felt like pages from someone else's story. Nia glanced at Everett, studying his profile as he listened intently to Pastor Matthews's sermon about grace and growth. He looked different here, away from the corporate towers and executive meetings. His usual power suits replaced by a simple navy blazer, his CEO persona softened by the humble atmosphere of worship. She remembered that rainy night, the fear that had gripped her throat, the stranger who had stepped between her and danger. If someone had told her then that the mysterious man would turn out to be both her greatest challenge and her deepest blessing, she would never have believed it. The choir began singing "Amazing Grace," and Nia felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. The lyrics spoke of being lost and found, but her journey had been about something else entirely. About being seen, truly seen, not as someone to rescue but as someone to respect. Everett must have sensed her emotion because he squeezed her hand gently. She squeezed back, grateful for how far they'd both come. He had learned that love couldn't be bought or arranged through executive orders. She had learned that accepting help didn't mean surrendering her dignity. As the congregation stood for prayer, Nia closed her eyes, feeling the solid warmth of Everett beside her. She thought about her mother, now recovering steadily, who had smiled knowingly when Nia had brought Everett to visit last week. Sometimes God's greatest gifts come wrapped in our greatest challenges. her mother had said, patting Everett's hand with maternal affection. The memory of those first difficult conversations in Everett's office seemed distant now. The hurt and anger she'd felt upon discovering his well-meaning but misguided attempts to orchestrate her life had transformed into something else. Appreciation for how he'd listened, really listened, when she stood her ground. After the service, they lingered in the fellowship hall, sharing coffee and conversation with other congregants. Sister Pauline approached them, her eyes twinkling with wisdom and warmth. "Well, well," she said, adjusting her purple hat. "Looks like somebody learned about the difference between helping and hovering." Everett chuckled, accepting the gentle ribbing with grace. "Yes, ma'am," he replied. "Some lessons are harder than others, but they're worth learning." Nia watched as he chatted easily with the church members. No trace of the controlling CEO who had once thought he could fix everything with his resources and influence. Here, he was just a man, standing beside the woman he cared for, letting her light shine on its own. They walked home together through the city streets, past the corner where their story had begun. The same buildings stood, the same traffic lights blinked, but everything else had changed. Nia no longer hurried through these streets with her shoulders tensed, looking over her shoulder. Instead, she walked with quiet confidence, her head held high. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked, pausing at the intersection. Everett stopped beside her, his expression thoughtful. "Every day," he admitted. "But not because of the danger anymore. I think about how that moment led to all of this, to learning what real strength looks like." Nia nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. "I'd used to think strength meant handling everything alone," she said, watching a young mother push a stroller past them. "Now I know it's about knowing when to stand firm and when to let others walk beside you." They continued their walk, passing the cafe where she used to work evening shifts. The new manager waved through the window, and Nia waved back, remembering the exhaustion of working 2 jobs. Those days of constant struggle seemed like a lifetime ago, but she was grateful for them. They had shaped her, taught her resilience, showed her what she was capable of. "You know," Everett said as they approached her apartment building, "I used to think I could solve any problem if I just threw enough resources at it. Running a company can give you that illusion of control." "And now?" Nia asked, though she already knew the answer. "Now I understand that the greatest gift isn't in fixing things for people," he replied, his voice soft but certain. "It's in standing with them while they find their own way." They climbed the stairs to her apartment, where Sunday dinner was becoming a tradition. The smell of her mother's recipe for sweet potato pie wafted through the hallway. She'd baked it yesterday, wanting to share a piece of her heritage with Everett. Inside, sunlight filled her small but warm living space. On the wall hung her framed project proposal, the one that had succeeded on its own merits, not through behind-the-scenes manipulation. Beside it was a photo from the community center, where her data initiative had helped secure better resources for struggling neighborhoods. Nia moved around her kitchen, gathering plates and forks, while Everett poured them both glasses of iced tea. The easy domesticity of the moment struck her. How natural it felt to share this space, this life, with someone who had learned to love her without trying to control her destiny. "Thank you," she said suddenly, making him look up from where he was arranging napkins on her small dining table. "For what?" "For learning with me. For being willing to change. For seeing me. Really seeing me." Everett set down the napkins and crossed the kitchen to her. His eyes held the same gentleness she'd glimpsed that first night, but now it was deeper, tempered by understanding and respect. "Thank you," he replied, "for teaching me that love isn't about protection or provision. It's about presence, about walking together, even when the path gets difficult." Nia reached for his hand, feeling the strength in his fingers as they wrapped around hers. The touch was different. Now, not a rescue, not a shelter from the storm, but a sharing of equals, a choice made in freedom and mutual respect. Through her window, she could see the city stretching out before them, the same streets where she had once walked alone and afraid. Now she walked them with purpose, with dignity, with a partner who had learned to cherish her strength as much as her vulnerability. The morning's hymns still echoed in her heart as they sat down to share their meal, their hands joined in quiet prayer. In the peaceful silence, Nia felt the truth of how far they'd come, from stranger to savior to equal, from fear to strength, from rescue to respect. Their story had transformed into something beautiful, not because of grand gestures or dramatic changes, but through the quiet miracle of two people learning to see and honor the dignity in each other. This was what true love looked like. Not a fairy tale rescue, but a journey walked together in faith, truth, and mutual understanding. As they shared their Sunday meal, Nia felt a deep sense of peace settle over her heart, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as equals, their bond strengthened by respect and grounded in genuine love. Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.